Do you want to be a fast boy in the canyons, but don't have a lot of money to spend? Well, I'm going to give you 5 really cool tips, tricks, and mods today to help you improve the lifespan of your car, make it more robust, and to be a faster driver in the canyons. So stay tuned. So as some of you know, I'm located in Arizona. I'm not going to say where exactly, but it feels like the surface of the sun lately. It's approaching almost midsummer now. It's like 100 degrees outside. Can't really do much work. So I am installing a mini split system in my garage. If you guys aren't familiar with that, it's a fairly low cost and high efficient AC unit. And it's fairly portable and easy to install. There's an inside wall mount unit and then an outdoor heat pump. And it's really cool because it's a great way to have AC in your garage. So I'll be having an upcoming video on possibly parts of the install on that. I can't really show some of the electrical install for legal purposes because I'm not a licensed contractor. So I'll kind of step through and give you the cost breakdown and at the end if it was worth it or not. For me, I'm in the garage a lot of the time and I got this YouTube channel now, so it's pretty important for me to do that. On other fronts, I did sell the E30, the ITB E30. I really didn't feel like it was suited for me and what I was looking to do with the car. It was going to be a considerable amount of effort, and I did want to focus on my other builds, so I did let that thing go. I will be extensively modding the C5Z06. I'll be doing a pretty cool episode on that. I'm not going to reveal all the mods yet. If you do follow me on Instagram, you kind of know the gist of what I'm looking to do with that car. Spent way too much money on mods, and I'm going to be showing the install videos on that. So now that we got those quick updates out of the way, let's get into the video. Number 1 is obviously going to be tires. That is going to give you the best bang for your buck as far as improved handling, performance, safety. I would not skimp on tires in any way, shape, or form. I have gone through probably all kinds of different brands and tires and treadwear, and I can tell you that it all boils down to your treadwear rating. So if you look on the side of your tire, you will see a treadwear rating. What this essentially means is a manufacturer's rating for the density or compound of the tire itself. So a lower treadwear is going to obviously wear faster, but it's going to have a lower silica content, which is going to cause that to wear faster, but it will yield more grip. So on the one side of the spectrum, you have really aggressive R compound tires that are like sometimes in the lower 100 treadwear range, sometimes 200, 150. Those will be super grippy. And then you have on the other side of the spectrum kind of like an all-season or economy tire, which is going to be, I've seen 500, 600, 700, 800 treadwear. And that's going to be a really hard compound and not going to give you a ton of grip, but will give you a longer lifespan. So you have to kind of experiment and determine what treadwear rating is right for you. If all you do is run your car in the canyons, you may want to go with a more aggressive compound like I do with some of my cars, or track oriented only. You can go with the lower treadwear compounds. And then on the other end of the spectrum, if it takes you a long time to drive to the Twisties or it's your daily driver, I would go probably 300 treadwear, so that's going to be like a Pilot Super Sport or something along those lines. The other thing to look for in tires, and there's no actual rating from this from the manufacturers, unfortunately, but you want to look at sidewall stiffness. You may get a good indication of this in how many plies the tire is, or how many bias sections there are to stiffen that sidewall. But you want a fairly stiff sidewall. Too stiff sometimes will give you a harsher ride, especially on a road where there's a lot of potholes or really kind of edges on the concrete. As you're going over it, you're going to feel all that and maybe disrupt the balance of the car. So as far as that goes, I would just look at reviews. Some people say, oh, this tire has a really mushy sidewall, or this has a really good stiff sidewall. It's going to come down to your personal preference again. But a lot of that has to do with, communicating road feel to obviously your hands and your butt. So if your car is understeering or oversteering, you can feel that all the way coming from the tire all the way to the steering wheel itself. So the last thing related to tires is the actual performance category. And again, every manufacturer is different. There's no set guideline on this. They'll call it extreme performance or max performance or ultra performance. Really, the main categories you want to look for, obviously, is it should say summer tire, or not have all season in the name. Obviously, like extreme performance summer or max performance summer are keywords you want to look for when looking for something like that. There are tires closer to our compound or track tires. Obviously, just make sure they're DOT certified, that they have the rain grooves in there to extract any water. If you are driving on a rainy day, you don't want it to become dangerous, and so you don't want to be running a full slick on the street, obviously, because you will hydroplane extremely easily. Okay, number 2 on the list, you probably expected this one, is obviously going to be brakes. You need to be able to stop. And actually, you can be pretty quick if you have a really good braking system. So good brake pads and rotors go a long way. You can brake later in corners and make up a lot of time and stay on that throttle for longer, and brake way deeper in those straightaways. So that's pretty important. First thing we're going to talk about in improving the braking system is your brake pads. Manufacturers do have quite a few choices across the different ranges. You can get a more track-oriented pad, which is going to have a higher temperature zone. Now, these temperature zones are their working efficiency. So if you ever think of race brakes, if you ever look at race cars, they have to take at least a couple laps to heat up their brakes. They have to get on the brakes, just ride the brakes for them to even get up to temperature and for them to work. But in turn, their temperature rating or range working efficiency is at a higher level than a normal economy pad, let's say. So you have to find a good balance of what temperature range are my brakes usually in. And you can do this by getting some sort of temperature gauge. You can get the stickers that go on the caliper themselves to show you the temperature range as you're running. You can get a temperature gun, digital one. I have a cheap Harbor Freight one, works great. I think it was like $30. And that you can monitor your cooling system as well, so that's a bonus. So you want to determine first your working temperature range, and then look on the manufacturer's websites, and they should have a chart showing you basically working temps of the different categories of pads that they offer, and then just see what works best for you. The different materials that they're made out of are more resistant to heat, but at the same time, they will take longer to warm up. If you do end up going too aggressive of a pad, that could be dangerous on the street, because again, if you're doing street driving, just driving on the highway, your pads are going to be cold. And then when you have to suddenly brake or emergency stop, those brakes are not going to be there because they haven't met their certain temperature range yet. So these manufacturers, as time went on, They do have wider and wider temperature efficiency ranges, so super low temp to super high, and more broad spectrums. And it all has to do with what the pads are made out of. I personally like the EBC brakes. They're fairly cheap. You can get away with two if you are on a budget running, upgraded front pads. The front of your car does the majority of the braking anyways. You can add actually to a brake bias gauge or dial to move some of that brake bias to the front or rear. And there's a whole science behind that as well. I won't get too deep into that. The next part of your brakes obviously is the rotors. They have, different options. They have blanks, which are just your standard rotor without drills or slots. Then you can have drilled rotors or slotted rotors. I'm not really a huge fan of any of that. I know like the J-hook style works okay for extracting, brake gases and things as you're braking really hard, but I don't really mess with that. I usually stick to the blanks. The Brembo blanks are fairly reasonably priced and they do a really good job. A lot of these cheaper ones like R1 Concepts and things, I've heard some like horror stories of, they take it out for the first time in the canyons, they get on it and the brake rotors start warping due to heat. So you want to get a fairly quality rotor that's going to last you a while, and obviously depending on what it's made out of, it should last you a little bit longer too. The last thing I want to talk about is your brake lines. So brake lines, usually for a full set for a car, they're right around $100, $150, depending on how long they have to be and things like that. But if you get stainless steel braided upgraded brake lines, it's less susceptible to heat. The rubber lines, if they get super heated to almost race temperatures, they can fail, which can be dangerous in your braking system. And it will give you better braking feel and modulation. You don't have these brake lines, these rubber brake lines that are swelling up and down when you're trying to apply, 1,500, 2,000 PSI of braking pressure. So they're not going to sort of swell under the immense pressure. And then lastly is going to be your brake fluid. You want to keep an eye on that almost anytime you go out or before you go out. If it's looking brown or not clear, and all brake fluid should really be clear, it got burnt or it's just old and has accumulated water in it, and that's not good for hydraulic systems. So they do sell track rated, rated fluids that are more higher temp, and that will give you a longer life and greater safety too. I do like they sell the Motul different brake fluids. They are fairly pricey, but again, they should last a little bit longer and not accumulate water or boil or overheat. I think the top one is rated for 650 degrees, so you shouldn't really have an issue there. So number 3, I have weight reduction on the list. And this one may not seem like it really has much effect on the car, but it really does. For every pound you remove, that can feel like an immense amount of power added just by removing that weight. And so there's 2 types of weight. There's sprung weight and unsprung weight. The unsprung weight is going to be anything related to rotating assemblies in the car. So this could be drive shafts. This could be your braking system rotating, wheels and tires. So if you can lighten that up, that has one of the greatest effects on performance. And this can get kind of pricey because you're getting into lightweight forged wheels sometimes, or a thinner tire, which can be more expensive, or a 2-piece rotor, which are lighter weight. So it's really up to you. But the sprung weight, so any kind of weight that's inside the chassis itself, so seats, any kind of sound deadening from the manufacturer, Rear seats, if you got a sedan or a coupe, you can remove, trunk liners, spare tires, and then just run like fix a flat or something. That's what I usually do. That kind of stuff will greatly improve the performance. And as you, take out weight, again, your consumables are going to appreciate that. So tires and brakes will have to do less work if you're carrying around less weight in your car. So just think of like a motorcycle or something, those things weigh, 500-600 pounds sometimes. And then you, the rider, which is not a ton of weight, but they have such skinny tires. And that's because, there really isn't a lot of weight for you to need the grip for. And then a lot of times on the other side of the spectrum, if you have a really heavy car like a Camaro or a Challenger, some kind of boat, that's going to require a lot wider tire you'll see on those cars just to maintain the same grip level. So sometimes if you have enough weight reduction, you can actually make your tires more narrow, or save if you're going through tires every couple of months, this may save you a few extra months just by having a lot less weight to carry around. The other common mistake I see people make is they just run too big of wheels. They think it looks cool, but they'll go from like if your car has like a 17 on it, they'll go to 18s or 19s. That just adds more unsprung weight, which slows your car down. So the smallest wheel you can run within reason, I personally wouldn't go smaller than the manufacturer's side, is going to give you a little bit better performance. But the only trade-off is a bigger wheel, I know, can absorb some of the bumps a little bit better. So there's kind of a little bit of a trade-off there, but not much. Mod number 4, that's fairly inexpensive depending on what kind of shop you go to. This can range anywhere from $60 to sometimes $150, $200. But this is going to be your alignment. Alignment settings are extremely important and can have a great effect on the handling and performance of your car. I won't get into specifics because front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, all wheel drive are going to have completely different alignment settings. But a general rule of thumb is if you increase front camber considerably and rear camber just a bit, maybe like 2-3 degrees, that will create a more of an oversteer condition and greatly reduce your understeer. So if you look at the side of the tire when you're done with a run and you see that outer edge is just ripped up and even maybe your tire's folding over, you can see even on the sidewall there's wear. That's a pretty good indication that you need to run more camber. And I did actually just found this out like not too long ago. Every tire has a little arrow on the sidewall, and this will show you where the ultimate grip level is and the fact that you're maximizing all of the tread patch of the tire when it's starting to wear all the way to where that arrow is. So if you're running too much camber and you're not wearing to that little indicated arrow on the side of the tire, then you need to dial the camber back a little bit. So this can be a little bit trial and error process. That's why it might be good to get your own toe plates and do alignment yourself, or even do a string alignment. This can have a huge benefit if you really dial that in properly. And depending on the road too, if you have a really tight, super tight corners, like 90-degree hairpins most of the way, you're gonna want probably a little bit more camber. And then if they're more high-speed corners, you could probably dial that camber back a little bit. And then if you have really stiff springs or sway bars, you're not gonna have a lot of body roll, and in turn you won't need a lot of camber as well. Toe, people change the toe angle a little bit. I don't really mess with that. Most of my cars I run zero toe because I don't want that extra wear. That's what wears out tires extremely fast. But A little bit of toe out, I hear, can help with turn in. I have experienced that a little bit. I think I've done like a 1/8 inch toe out sometimes, but it makes it very, very twitchy on the highway, and I wouldn't recommend it personally for a street car, mainly for, track cars, something like that. Now, unexpectedly, number 5 is going to be driver mod, and that could potentially be free depending on how you look at it. So I want to tread lightly on this one. I did make a prior video that I'll link to the end of this one, named How to Be a Better Driver in the Canyons. Kind of silly, but I gave you some generalized tips there too. But really, this boils down to, having seat time and just getting a feel for your car, experimenting with different things. If I, take it at X speed in this corner, or I brake a little bit sooner, a little bit later, or turn in sooner or later, making one change at a time in a scientific fashion will yield you the best results. You don't want to be changing 10 different parameters and seeing if that improves anything or not. And the only way you'll know if you improve is if you obviously, you could record yourself during Touge runs, GoPro, and compare the video footage every time, which I'm going to do myself because I want to compare between my different cars and see, which one was the fastest. But you can compare your videos to see how you've progressed, or if the change made you faster or slower, or simply time it on your phone or something like that. Just pick 2 points on a road and then start and stop your timer and then see if you got any quicker or slower. You can do it by section if there's certain sections of the road, stuff like that. But even if you want to keep a log book in the car of, say, here, this day I made this change, or this driving habit changed and I got faster. I mean, that's going to be better than no data. Too much data can be data overload sometimes, so you have to be careful with that. But again, if you change one parameter at a time in a scientific fashion, that's going to, make things a lot easier. The other thing that's been helpful for me personally, and I'm starting to teach my girlfriend too how to drive in the canyons, but it was helpful to me to use my racing simulator. I do have just a basic G29 wheel, and I use my PC. I may get VR eventually too to make the complete experience, but I do have, it almost feels like thousands of hours of seat time on the racing sim, and that really allows you to, try wild and crazy changes and not have any consequences. And it allows you to not consume gas and tires and brakes, which can be very expensive, and try things out and not have any sort of impact on monetary or potentially getting pulled over, problems. So I love to use my racing sim and try new things out, see if it's faster or slower, different techniques, and just reading from racing books and taking different racing lines on different tracks just to see, how it plays out. Driving a wide array of cars too is a huge deal. So if you ever have the opportunity to drive one of your friend's cars, do it, because that will only make you a more skilled driver. If you've only dealt with rear-wheel drive cars and your friend's got a really fast Honda or something, front-wheel drive, you may want to try it out just to see what it's like. You have to usually change up your driving habits. If someone has an all-wheel drive car and you're only used to front-wheel drive, again, go for it. Obviously, don't crash their car or go too crazy with their car, but within reason, it will definitely make you a better driver. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. I really appreciate the views and likes, guys. I'm really just trying to, get a couple more subscribers here and there. So if you want to sub, that'd be awesome, because these videos are immensely hard work. It doesn't seem like it. They seem pretty basic from other YouTuber videos, but I can tell you it's almost double the amount of work versus just wrenching on your car. But it is very rewarding looking at the comments of, people saying, hey, you're doing a great job, or, things like that, or keep it up. So I really appreciate you guys, and just tune in and wait for the next one. Thanks.